Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to build this air filter for my shop. It's got a pretty small fan on it, so we're going to see if it works. Stay tuned and check it out. To start, I cut a bunch of pieces to 1 inch in width. And this is another great project to use up a bunch of those scrap pieces of plywood that you just never seem to throw away. With the strips of plywood ripped to width, I could measure the outside dimensions of the filter and cut the pieces to length. Since I made 4 of these picture frames, I decided to set up a stop block to make consistent, repeatable cuts. With the pieces cut to length, I marked the locations for the dowels. With the location marked on the long pieces, I then transferred those marks to the shorter pieces that they were going to join to. Then I picked up this doweling jig, lined up the center line of the jig with the marks that I just made on the plywood, and began drilling holes. One thing I noticed is that the black metal part of this jig was exactly 3/4 of an inch, but the 3/4 inch plywood was slightly less, meaning that when I was drilling the first few holes with the entire jig clamped down on the top of the work surface, it was actually drilling at a slight angle. So for the remaining holes, I let the base of the jig hang off the edge of the work surface, and that way I got much straighter holes. With all the holes drilled, I began assembling the pieces using glue and 1.5 inch dowels, then clamping everything together, letting it dry overnight. The next day I took the frames out of the clamps. Then I ripped a piece of plywood to approximately 12 inches in width, as this would be the overall thickness for the air filter box. With the plywood ripped to width, I used a frame to mark out the length at which I would cross-cut both the top and the bottom pieces for the box. Then I used glue and brad nails to assemble the top and the bottom of the box to the first filter frame. With the first filter frame in place, I began attaching the rest of them using the actual filters as spacers. I simply placed a filter down and then glued and brad nailed the next filter frame in place. And I used some scrap cardboard as spacers on the remaining 2 filters, as the first filter was just a little bit too tight. After that, it was just rinse and repeat. Then I measured and cut 2 pieces that would make up the sides of the air filter box, and glued and brad nailed one of the sides in place. With one of the sides in place, I measured and cut a piece for the front panel of the box. Then I took the front grill off the fan so I could get an accurate tracing of the diameter of the fan. From there, I measured in approximately 1/2 inch for the flange of the fan and drew a new circle at this dimension using a drawing compass. With the fan location traced onto the front panel, I then took it to the bandsaw and cut it out. I first cut this piece in half, as I'd have to mount this to the rest of the box in 2 pieces in order to get the fan in and out. Then I pre-drilled and screwed the first half in place. I didn't use any glue in this instance, just in case I would ever have to remove or replace the fan. Then I secured the fan in place with a few screws. I used a Forstner bit to make a hole for the cord to run through before cutting a piano hinge to size and attaching that to the bottom of the remaining side panel. I plan to use sealant tape along the edges, so I spaced the side panel accordingly using some more scrap cardboard. Then I applied the sealant tape. Finally, to keep this box closed, I installed some hook and loop latches. With that, all that was left to do was install it in place. And if you make this air filter, you may want to place it somewhere else in your shop, but for me, I decided to hang it from the ceiling. So in order to do that, I first added some small sections of chain to some screw eyes before attaching the screw eyes to the air filter box. Then I attached some scrap plywood slats to the ceiling, making sure they hit a joist, and then I added screw hooks to the plywood slats. All that was left to do was plug it into a remote outlet and breathe in some of that fresh filtered air. Alright, so here's the thing. I did go ahead and I installed this on the ceiling, turned the fan on, the fan's spinning, everything. It's fine. I guess I'm just a little bit disappointed with the lack of air movement through it. I guess maybe I was just expecting a little bit too much out of this small 9-inch fan. Other than that, I'm happy with the build. I'm happy that I got the carcass of an air filter built. So I think either one of two things. I'll either go ahead and pick up another one of these small fans and just recut this front face and mount the two side by side, or I'll pick up a slightly bigger fan, mount that in there, and hopefully it works a little bit better. So a little bit disappointed, but what are you gonna do? With that being said, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button down below. That just tells me and YouTube that it's a decent video, and maybe it should suggest it to other people as well. And while you're down there, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well. That way you're notified every time I release a new video. Again, I'll leave a link to the downloadable plans for this filter box in the description box below. So if you're interested in building something like this, possibly with a slightly bigger fan, go ahead and hit that link, download those plans, and you're good to go. And until next time, thanks for watching.